I'm 85, so I was born in 1927, and I was born on the Manor Estate in Sheffield. Mother and father, Walter Hawley, and Isabel, his wife, lived at a road called Stonecliffe Road. We lived there together with my grandfather, and in 1959 I'd always got the end to starting my own shop in Sheffield, and I started in 1959 by buying a tiny business, and it was a one up and one down converted house of about 1800 vintage, clapped out, run down, and 2 years later the corporation pulled it down. But in that time I just started enough to build up enough business in order to take some new property, which I did across the road. And I was at number 6 Earl Street in Sheffield from 1961 to 89, and that's when I retired. I suppose it was around about 1950, and a man came in the shop to buy an electric planing machine, and I went to demonstrate this thing at his works. And whilst he's planing, I had a look round and I saw a joiner's brace on the wall, and I thought that's an unusual pattern I didn't seem to have seen before, and I acquired it, and it's that. So that's the very first tool that I actually acquired, and it's that set me off. Never before, ever, had I taken the slightest bit of interest in anything historical whatsoever, and that was it. So you can thank that thing. In 1965 I went to a firm called William Marple's in the course of business to pick some tools up, and I was in the warehouse there, and their works manager came to see me, and he said to me, "Mr. Hawley?" I said, "Yes." He says, "You're interested in oak tools?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, our playmakers is going to finish, and they were actually the last manufacturers in the world to make planes of this sort. These are the wooden planes that used to be used by all joiners." So I thought, can I have one or two? So we found a cardboard box this size, we filled it, I got it home, I thought, this is alright, this lot here. So I sorted through it. So when I plucked up enough courage, went back again, and I got everything. Every single thing I could lay my hands on, I got. The only thing that was left that I hadn't got were the benches, and you can't get them in a cardboard box. So I had to bite the bullet then and talk to the boss. So one day I rang up Mr. O'Connor Fenton. "Oh, Mr. Fenton," I said, "is it possible, please, I could have one of those benches out of the playmaker shop?" "You take them, Mr. Hawley, you take them." So Mr. Hawley took them. I had a Volvo estate at that time. I could get a lot of stuff in, and I crammed it full of stuff. This is a French plane. It's, I think it's early 19th century. For small items, I stick them in drawers, and this is a drawer on this particular one, it's cutlery and surgical instruments. There's one or two file making things in. This is a case of ophthalmic knives for surgeons to work on eyes, people's eyes. I'm very keen on measuring tools of all sorts. This is a joiner's level with a cover on, so that the glass tube doesn't get broken. Here's an interesting tool, rather like a file, with a cranked shank, as we call it, oval section, that, looking at it that way. I haven't the faintest idea what it's for, and all I'm showing this for is just to show it, no matter how much you know, there's always something you've no idea about, and it's a good job that it is, because otherwise some people get a big head. can see they're all laid out. And they're going to wipe them, make sure they're entirely clean, and then wrap them up. And she is cleaning a knife. That's a knife blade, and she's wetting the edge of it to make sure it's sharp, and so on. So we know that every single thing, if you know a little bit about these things, you can work out by the hands what each one is doing.
Yeah.
We started making saws in Sheffield around 1760, and we were continuing to make, well, they make them today. There's just one firm left making this quality of saw, this left in Sheffield. This is quite an interesting saw with an interesting name on the handle, D-U-I-F-J-E. It's made in Sheffield by a firm called Slack Sellers. And they made this in the thousands and thousands. That one says Joseph Tysick on it, who was a Sheffield saw manufacturer. And this particular part is one of the storage areas we've got, in which we've got rolling racking, in which we store a lot of our artefacts. Not all of them by any means, probably only half of the stuff we've got. We need at least as much again. This lot of stuff here is from a man who cut funny, peculiar shaped holes in silver, and these are called scales, and they are designs that will be put onto a piece of silver, traced onto silver, and then all those designs are actually cut out. This is a case here of knives, and these were made by Joseph Rogers. This is table cutlery. And then we come down to stainless steel, massive amounts of stainless steel knives. Knives for all sorts of different trades right across the world. I had somebody from the University of Sheffield in, archaeology department, and he said to me, could I tell him what a certain knife was? So he drew it me, and it looked like that. So I said to him, it's a rubber tapping knife. He didn't believe me, but it is. Then we come on to all the catalogues we've got. This is a good example of a catalogue. This is Lockwood Brothers. I guess this is, well, mid-19th century. And we can open this up. I'll just look at the title page first. The wording is interesting. Lockwood Brothers, Colonists' Guide to the Selection of Cutlery. Manufactory, 74 Arundel Street, Sheffield. And it shows some of the knives that they made. And this is an absolutely exquisite knife with all the implements there that you could think of, and different blades for doing different jobs. That's a horse hook for getting, I was going to say getting Boy Scouts out of horses' hooves. It's really getting stones out of horses' hooves. The Hawley Collection is more than Ken Hawley himself. It's that big that we rely on a lot of volunteers to help. So various people have been invited to come, coerced in some way or other to help, and we now have about 15 people coming in, and each one more or less deals with a specialist area. And there's people doing documents, the paperwork, a lot of that work to be done. Others specialise in planes, some do cleaning up, some do the recording of the actual makers, one fella does saws, and so on. And it's a wonderful arrangement, and if we don't record it, it's not there. So we're dependent on all these people. It is wonderful. We all enjoy it very well. Nobody gets paid. We all do it for the love of it. That says Johnson saws.
Yeah, it's all the stuff they've factored for other people.
No. Johnsons were a saw maker in their own right. Around 1850, if I remember right, that they must have taken over. Forever. Hundreds of them. And all these are samples of what will be labelled upon individual packages of saws. Yeah. They'd be wrapped up in brown paper at that time, in either quarter dozens or half dozens. So these were his tools that he used with them. Yeah. That's quite interesting, isn't it?
The Ken Hawley Trust was formed obviously to inherit the collection from Ken,
But I think primary role is to continue and ensure that there is a legacy for the collection in the form of not only acquiring new materials that are representative of industries of the future that continue traditions of the collection, but also to have an active role in developing an education and research programme.
This is a screw box and tap made by William Marples. Well, it's sold by William Marples, but it's actually made by an old friend of mine who died many years ago, a man called Cyril Smith, who made these on behalf of, it was a William Marples workman, and he told me all about making them. And almost certainly this particular one will have been made by him. This particular micrometer was owned by my father, and I think he must have bought it in the very early 1930s. That was the very time that this is made by Moore and Wrights of Sheffield, this micrometer. I suppose when I've done with it, it will go down to the Hawley Collection as an example. But now I want it because it belonged to my father, and it's the affinity I have and the remembrance that you have in as part of a family thing. And so it's still in its original wooden box with its key, and it lives there until I want to use it next time. But I'm holding something. My father must have died, was it 40 years ago now, and or more, and it's still here, and that's a bit I like about it. But I have a lot of some of his tools that he had, but I can't say I'm an accomplished metalworker in any way at all, but I like to do the best job I can. Wonderful place Sheffield was, wonderful, all the skills of the different people. We did everything in Sheffield, wonderful. I feel very privileged to have lived through that time, really.